Hi, thank you for joining us today. This is beautiful Sparky here, and she would like to say hello. So she might come and go throughout the video, but I did just have some malt paste on my hand, so she's just finished that up, so we'll see if she comes back to play again. So I would like to talk today about Sparky. She is a female rat. She's almost 1 year old, and she is unfortunately the first rat which I've ever had to separate temporarily from the rest of the mischief. And I want to talk today about why that's happened, you know, some of the things which I'm hoping to do to fix this in the future, and what I'm currently doing to minimise the impact on her. Because if you're not aware, rats being on their own is just, it's the biggest no-no. They can get severely depressed. They need attention. No matter how much attention we can give them as humans, they need that sibling, sort of that companionship from other rats. You know, the way that they can communicate with each other is a way that humans can never offer. And when you look at, you know, photos of rats, if you don't have rats yourself, you might see in the photos and videos that they're very often snuggled together. They do really, really well in groups, even better than if they're just in pairs usually. So having to remove Sparky from the rest of my group, my mischief, is really problematic. So I'd like to talk a little bit, first of all, about Sparky, how I think this may have come about, and, you know, a bit more about what I plan to do. So I got Sparky, she was actually, as a baby, she was unfortunately being sold as a female on her own. So that's the reason why we bought her, because we knew that we were experienced rat owners, we'd be able to do intros, and hopefully she would be able to join the rest of our girls. So at the time when we got her, she was 6 weeks old, so that's sort of the minimum age that I've heard that rats can really be taken away from their mothers, sort of thing. And she, you know, she was tiny in comparison to the rest of my girls. So at the time I had 2 separate cages with 2 separate groups of girls, because the intros until then had just never been a success. I can talk more about that in another video, because, you know, fast forward quite a while and they are actually now happily living together. It took a long time, and myself and my partner thought that, you know, these rats were just never going to get on, but we've managed to get them to bond, and now they're just even happier than they were before. So with Sparky, she was way too small to be introduced to the other rats at first. So what we did was we kept her in the lounge with the other girls, but she was in a separate cage. She could smell her sisters, or to-be sisters, and that was sort of, you know, what we did. She had her own little free roam time separately. You know, we had to keep her safe, keep her separate. So what we did with her is, sorry, she's just climbing around. Hey Sparky! So what we did with her is we, first of all, once she had finally got old enough to, and, you know, sort of big enough and strong enough to be introduced to the females, we did manage to bond her with one of the pairs. So we bonded her with our 2 eldest rats. So we had rescued these. They were 1.5 years when we had rescued them. They were about 2 years old when we had bonded them together. And honestly, seeing the life that, once we'd gone through the intro safely, seeing the life that Sparky had brought to the other 2 girls was just absolutely incredible. They would play so much, they would snuggle. The 2 older ladies, you know, they got so much more energetic, and it was just absolutely fantastic. The only thing is with Sparky, she is very boisterous and very dominant. So at first we were thinking maybe it's because she had unfortunately had to have that time at first on her own, but we also knew we were doing the best we could for her, and we were just keeping an eye out on her sisters, making sure she wasn't being too much for them, and everything seemed like it was going well. So what we then did is we also, I would say about 1 year later, we rescued some more females. So we then had the 2 in one cage. We had Remy and Sparky in another cage, because we lost a baby unfortunately due to old age. So Remy, you know, at this time, she's coming up to 3 years old. So she's very, very, you know, she's quite old for a rat. She's doing beautifully well though. And Sparky is well, Sparky was in with her. We got the new rats. The idea was to put them, initially was to put the 3 new rescues in with Remy and Sparky, because we knew Remy was getting older and Sparky would then need new cage mates to not be alone. So we started to do the introductions slowly. We used the carrier method. I can talk more about this on another video. And things just weren't going too well. Sparky was very, very puffed, quite looking at, aggressive feeling looking. She hadn't actually done anything wrong. Sorry, I shouldn't say wrong, but she hadn't actually done anything at this point, but you could tell she was very unhappy and very uncomfortable in the situation. So the next morning I popped them in the carrier again and was closely monitoring them, and I just wasn't comfortable with the situation. So I tried my other 2 females, who initially we'd had problems with one of them, thinking she was the aggressive one while I was trying to do the intros. We popped them together and they were absolutely fine. They were just, sniffing around, eating the treats. They weren't really interested in each other at first. Everything was going brilliantly. So, we slowly went up through the stages. We went up to the next stage in carrier, so we increased the size. And when it came to this one, we were watching them and they were doing fantastically. So we decided then to try and add Remy and Sparky again. And this time, they weren't too phased. At first they were a bit like, oh, what's going on? But they did absolutely fantastically. So it's a long process. We slowly went through all of the stages for the introductions, and it got to the stage where all of the girls were getting on really well, and we had managed to get the 3 separate cages into one big mischief, and we were just absolutely over the moon. It seemed that the 3 new girls which we had rescued, they sort of managed to gel the others together in a way that we could do the introductions, and they became a mischief. So Sparky was quite boisterous from the start. She was pinning a bit more aggressively, where the other girls were just not so interested, but they were kind of finding their feet. But it was at the point where there was no fighting, nothing like that. There was no puffiness, no signs of aggression, and we had been monitoring them. Hello, Sparky. We'd been monitoring them completely, and we were happy with them, with their new living situation. So they were in the full-size cage, and everything had been going fine for a couple of days. So myself and my partner, we took it in turns sleeping downstairs, just so that the rats were basically never alone. So if there was any squabbles in the night, we would, be able to hear, and if necessary, intervene. But nothing had happened. There was a little, there were a few squabbles sort of thing, but nothing serious. So we were really happy and really relieved to see that the introductions and the living situation had seemed to be going really well, and that was the new mischief. So unfortunately, after a couple of days, Sparky had been getting more and more boisterous, and it got to the point where she was sleeping on her own and constantly trying to fight with her sisters. It was a bit more aggressive than just pinning, and we were monitoring this and getting very uncomfortable with the situation. We started doing some free roam with them as well at this point, because we didn't free roam them at first, just while they were getting used to each other, because once they would have access to the whole lounge, which is how we choose to free roam, we knew that there could be situations, territorial moments, anything like that. So looking back, I think that was the part that really set her over the edge, and she just couldn't handle being in this group anymore. So she was really really aggressive to the other rats, and it got to the point where one of them had actually, there'd been a fight and one of them had got cut quite badly. So we had contacted our vets and they wanted to see her. Luckily she was okay, but she had to stay in a hospital cage for about 5 days, which is obviously the last thing you want when you've just introduced some rats, and you don't want anyone to be separated. So we did this, followed the vet's instructions. Fortunately, she made a beautiful recovery. But during this stage, Sparky had just kept going and going at all the other sisters, and we'd noticed scabs had been appearing as well on the other girls. So it was a case of, it wasn't just that she was fighting a bit, she was hurting them. So we knew we had to separate her, and it wasn't a decision we took lightly. So we took her out from the group and we took her with her sister Remy as well, because they'd been bonded for a really long time. They got on well. So to prevent Sparky from being a lone rat, we had kept Remy with her.
So we noticed that she was acting differently now with Remy. She was very boisterous. And Remy's very old, like, you know, she's losing a lot of weight. She's developing hind leg degeneration. It's not great. She's really happy. She's doing really well, but she is old and she doesn't have the sort of energy to keep up with Sparky that she did when they were first together. But the fact that Remy was also getting hurt, you know, starting to get scabs on her and stuff, we realised that we had to separate Sparky completely because she was being so aggressive to her sister that it wasn't going to be safe anymore. So this was a decision which we had to make, but myself, I really struggled to come to terms with this because I'm aware of how serious it is to have a rat on their own and how problematic it can be for them. We popped Remy back in with the rest of her sisters, and you know, we slowly, just to make sure that the couple of days apart hadn't caused any issues. Nope, they welcomed her back. She was happy to be back, and she looked a lot more relaxed as well because she realised that she wasn't being pounced on constantly by Sparky, who was just very boisterous. So we've looked into things and we can say we're almost certain that it's definitely hormonal aggression with her, because she's never happy to back down from a pin. She's very boisterous. She's very boisterous with us. You have to understand, she is so loving, so lovely as well. But yeah, we were really struggling with everything, you know, how she was treating her sisters. So we looked into a couple of options. We sought some advice as well. We looked into either neutering her or getting an implant. So with the neutering, it will just be removing the ovaries, and that is actually what she's booked in for. So we had to wait about a month for the appointment, so we have a couple of weeks now to go. And what we're doing is for now, we're keeping her as happy as we can. And it hurts me to say, but she's doing the best I've ever seen her now that she's on her own again. So we're keeping the cages next to each other, but she's running around when she's having her free roam, and she looks so happy. Her behaviour is so much better. She's not trying to do things that she knows are naughty, like climbing into certain areas we don't let her climb. She has been so much better and so much more snuggly with us since she's been on her own, which is hard to see, but I'm glad at least. Here's Sparky. Get off of there, darling. She's climbing on the laptop. But I'm glad to see at least that she's thriving. Although I am concerned that after she does have her neutering done, that this might maybe make it harder to rebond her with the rest of the girls, but that is a bridge that we will cross when it comes to it. So, like I said, we looked into the neutering and we looked into the implant. So our biggest reason for being concerned about the neutering is because we don't want her to go under an anaesthetic. So I understand it does have the massive benefits of being able to prevent mammary tumours in the future. So we looked into that, and we also so I understand that spaying her will basically have the big benefits of preventing mammary tumours in the future, which can be quite a common problem in female rats. That's actually what we just lost a rat from about, it was 9 days ago now. And the fact that it does have the benefit of preventing the mammary tumours, of course, is a massive advantage for us. So what we're going to be doing is we've got her booked in, so she's only going to be a lone rat until then, and once she's recovered fully, we're going to start slowly doing introductions again from scratch, as if she's never been with the mischief before. So, sorry, she's just playing and she's so lovely. And you, darling. So, she's going to get spayed soon. We have a fantastic vets who, even though they're not an exotic vets, which we'd usually look into going to for rats, they've been absolutely fantastic with us. I would like to talk a bit more about the vets in the future in another video, but for the purposes of today's video, I'd like to talk about the vet nurse who will be performing her procedure. So she is their exotics expert in-house, and she actually does have so much experience with with exotics basically, and rats especially. So she was explaining that with the spaying that she'll be doing for Sparky, that instead of opening up, sort of like the lower belly, sorry if this gets a bit graphic, she'll basically be making a small incision in, I think it's like in her leg, and they sort of then, because the skin is so stretchy, they'll move it around, be able to do the procedure, and then kind of put the skin back and stitch her up, and that should prevent her from being able to pull out all of the stitches as easily, and it's going to be much lower. My understanding is much less invasive. I could be wrong on that, absolutely not an expert, but at least knowing that she's in such good hands, and the fact that she's doing the procedure this way compared to how I think it would normally be done is really reassuring to us. Sparky is, she is about 1 year old almost, so knowing that she is fit and healthy does make us feel a lot better about the fact that she is going under anaesthetic, because she should be okay. But a precaution that we will be taking is that we are going to say our goodbyes just in case something goes wrong. Heaven forbid that happen, but it can. Rats going under anaesthetic it is high risk, and that's why I said we've chosen not to spay our other females. But yeah, so we have that sort of to look forward to soon. But I'm really positive about it, knowing that she's booked in and knowing that she won't be alone for much longer. And I'm hoping that once she hopefully does get back in with her sisters, she'll just be much happier going forwards. Even though she's doing so well now, I hope that she has this same attitude in the future. But yeah, thank you for watching today, and I hope to see you again soon. Take care.